Angulimala, the path from darkness to enlightenment. In the vast tapestry of Buddhist literature, few narratives shine as brightly, or as unexpectedly, as the story of Angulimala. At first glance, the name conjures images of horror and brutality, a fearsome bandit known as the Garland of Fingers, whose hands were stained with the blood of countless victims. Yet, beneath this grim exterior lies a narrative of extraordinary transformation, a journey from unmitigated darkness into the radiant light of enlightenment, redemption, and compassion. This tale begins with a man who, by all accounts, seemed destined for a life of irrevocable sin. Born into circumstances marked by both potential and portent, he was fated by ancient astrological omens to walk a treacherous path. Despite early signs of brilliance and virtue in his youth, a series of misfortunes and manipulations steered him toward a life defined by violence. As Angulimala, he emerged as a terror, a symbol of cruelty in a world already brimming with suffering. His reputation spread like wildfire, a relentless reminder of the destructive potential that lay dormant within a single human being. Yet, the transformation of Angulimala is not merely a cautionary tale of evil unchecked, it is a celebration of the transformative power of the Buddha's teachings. Central to this story is the profound notion that every being, no matter how steeped in wrongdoing, harbors the capacity for change. Buddhism teaches that our past does not irrevocably determine our future, and the account of Angulimala powerfully encapsulates this message. It shows that the seeds of compassion, repentance, and wisdom can flourish even in the most unlikely soil, given the right guidance and the spark of insight. The turning point in this narrative is nothing short of miraculous, a moment when the Buddha, through his serene presence and boundless compassion, managed to pierce the veil of darkness that had shrouded Angulimala's soul. When confronted by the Enlightened One, the hardened killer experienced a profound internal shift. In that pivotal moment, the relentless cycle of violence halted abruptly, as if by a divine command. "I have already stopped, Angulimala. It is you who has not yet stopped." These words resonated deeply within him, stirring emotions and realizations that had long been suppressed. The Buddha's simple yet profound message offered a mirror in which Angulimala could finally recognize his true self, a self capable of choosing a different, more compassionate path. What makes this story so compelling is its universal resonance. In every age and culture, there remains a struggle between the forces of light and darkness within us all. Angulimala's journey reminds us that transformation is not reserved for the virtuous or the saintly. It is available to anyone who dares to confront their inner demons. His metamorphosis from a figure of terror to a beacon of hope underscores the Buddhist belief in the malleability of karma, that our actions, though weighted with the past, can be reshaped by our present intentions and efforts. Moreover, the narrative of Angulimala is a living testament to the impact of mentorship and spiritual guidance. The Buddha did not confront Angulimala with anger or condemnation. Instead, he met him with empathy and understanding. This compassionate approach is a cornerstone of Buddhist practice, reflecting the belief that the seeds of enlightenment can blossom in even the most barren of hearts when nurtured with love and wisdom. In a world often preoccupied with punishment and retribution, the Buddha's method stands out as a revolutionary act of kindness, inviting us all to consider the redemptive potential inherent in every individual. In our modern era, where stories of transformation are often met with skepticism, the legacy of Angulimala serves as a powerful reminder that no one is beyond hope. His life challenges us to rethink our judgments and prejudices, encouraging a more compassionate and inclusive outlook. It invites us to look beyond surface impressions and to seek the possibility of change in ourselves and in others. The transformation of Angulimala is not just an ancient story, it is a living philosophy, one that calls on each of us to reflect on our own lives, our choices, and our capacity for growth and renewal. This narrative also opens up broader philosophical questions that remain pertinent today. What defines our identity, our past actions, or our present intentions? Can a single moment of insight be enough to change the course of a life steeped in despair? And how do we, as a society, accommodate and support those who seek redemption, despite the weight of their past transgressions? Angulimāla's story does not provide easy answers. Rather, it invites a deep and reflective inquiry into the nature of transformation and the boundless potential of human compassion. As we delve deeper into the tale of Angulimāla, we will encounter a rich interplay of themes: destiny versus free will, the interplay of fate and personal responsibility, and the eternal struggle between the forces of negativity and the light of wisdom. Each chapter of his life is imbued with lessons that speak directly to the human experience: the possibility of forgiveness, the courage to change, and the liberating power of spiritual awakening. Ultimately, this expanded narrative is not just a recounting of historical events or mythical proportions. It is a vibrant, living lesson in the art of transformation. It challenges us to see beyond labels and to embrace the fundamental truth that within every being lies the potential for both great darkness and profound light. In the story of Angulimāla, we find an invitation to embark on our own journeys of introspection, healing, and growth, a journey that, though fraught with obstacles, holds the promise of a rebirth into a life defined by compassion, mindfulness, and boundless love. Welcome to a tale where even the most seemingly irredeemable can find solace in the light of wisdom, where every act of violence can be countered by a gesture of love, and where the path to enlightenment is accessible to anyone brave enough to stop and reflect. This is the story of Angulimāla, a timeless narrative that continues to inspire and challenge us to redefine what it means to be truly human. The early life of Ahimsaka. Ahimsaka's early years formed the essential bedrock upon which the dramatic transformation into Angulimāla was built, a narrative replete with promise, potential, and the latent tension between destiny and self-determination. Born into a distinguished Brahmin family in the flourishing kingdom of Kosala, his birth was celebrated with both joy and trepidation. While his arrival was heralded as the long-awaited blessing for a family renowned for its spiritual and scholarly accomplishments, it was also marred by an ominous prophecy issued by a revered royal astrologer. The prophecy foretold that this child would grow to become a significant menace to society. Yet, in the warmth of his family's love and the traditions of their faith, Ahimsaka's early life was imbued with hope and promise, a hope that even the darkest omen might be overcome by virtue and wisdom. A nurturing home in the kingdom of Kosala. In Kosala, a land celebrated for its rich cultural and religious heritage, family life was deeply intertwined with spiritual practice and scholarly pursuit. Ahimsaka's parents, steadfast adherents of the Brahminical tradition, valued education and moral rectitude above all. His father, who served as a royal priest in the court of King Pasenadi, was not only a respected figure within the kingdom but also a beacon of erudition and piety. From an early age, Ahimsaka was enveloped in an environment that prized intellectual inquiry and spiritual discipline. His home was a sanctuary of learning where the ancient Vedic texts were studied with reverence, and the rituals and ceremonies of the Brahmin tradition were observed with meticulous care. Despite the weight of the astrologer's dire prediction, his parents chose to nurture his innate talents rather than allow fate to dictate his future. They believed deeply in the transformative power of education and the moral capacity of every individual. In this nurturing environment, young Ahimsaka exhibited an insatiable curiosity. He would listen with rapt attention as his elders recited sacred hymns and explained the intricacies of ancient scriptures. His early interactions were not merely passive absorption of knowledge, they were the beginnings of a profound internal quest, a quest to understand the mysteries of existence and the principles of righteous living. Early signs of brilliance and curiosity. Even as a toddler, Ahimsaka's eyes shone with a unique blend of curiosity and insight. His ability to quickly grasp the nuances of language and ritual set him apart from his peers. While other children played with simple toys, Ahimsaka was more often found mimicking the solemn recitations of his elders, his small hands clapping in rhythm with the chants that echoed through his family's modest dwelling. It became evident to everyone around him that he possessed an unusual intellectual and spiritual aptitude. This early brilliance was nurtured meticulously, as his parents spared no effort in providing him with an education that combined both practical wisdom and the lofty ideals of spiritual discipline. His father, in particular, took great pride in imparting not just the formal aspects of their tradition but also the ethical values that would shape Ahimsaka's character. The elder priest often spoke of the delicate balance between destiny and personal effort, a balance that could tip the scales towards light or darkness. In these formative lessons, Ahimsaka began to internalize the belief that one's actions, more than any celestial prediction, determined one's ultimate fate. However, the specter of his foreseen destiny would remain a subtle undercurrent in his life, a challenge that he would confront in ways he could scarcely imagine. The transition to scholarly pursuits. As Ahimsaka grew, the expectations for his intellectual and spiritual development intensified. In a society that held scholarship in the highest regard, it was customary for children of his stature to be sent to renowned teachers who could further cultivate their innate potential. Thus, Ahimsaka's path led him to Acharya Dasapamak, an eminent teacher celebrated for his profound understanding of the sacred texts and esoteric doctrines of the Brahminical tradition. Under the tutelage of Acharya Dasapamak, Ahimsaka's education was taken to an entirely new level. The transition to this advanced phase of learning was seamless for Ahimsaka. His teacher recognized the rarity of his talent and took him under his wing, often referring to him as the embodiment of promise, a protege destined for greatness. In the intimate and rigorous setting of Acharya Dasapamak's household, Ahimsaka was exposed to complex philosophical ideas and practices that were far beyond the scope of ordinary study. Here, he engaged in debates and discussions, challenging and absorbing ideas with an ease that left even his mentor impressed. The environment was not only academically demanding but also spiritually charged, as students were expected to live by the ethical and moral principles that underpin their scholarly pursuits. The double-edged sword of excellence. While Ahimsaka's exceptional abilities brought him admiration and accolades, they also sowed the seeds of envy and resentment among some of his contemporaries. In any community, extraordinary talent can cast a long shadow, inviting both reverence and jealousy. Among his peers, there were those who, unable to match his brilliance, began to harbor feelings of bitterness. Their envy was not a trivial matter, it was rooted in a deep-seated fear of being overshadowed by a rising star. The scholarly environment, meant to be a collaborative space for learning and growth, was gradually tainted by undercurrents of rivalry and sabotage. These early adversities would later contribute significantly to the tragic trajectory of Ahimsaka's life. His peers, threatened by his potential, resorted to subtle acts of defamation and conspiracies that would eventually influence the decisions of his revered mentor. The transformation of a once promising scholar into a figure of terror was not merely the result of external circumstances but also of internal conflicts exacerbated by betrayal and isolation. Yet, in the crucible of these early challenges, there also emerged the latent capacity for resilience, a quality that would later become central to his path of redemption. The interplay of destiny and free will. The early life of Ahimsaka also serves as a profound meditation on the interplay between destiny and free will, a theme central to Buddhist philosophy. Born under a shadow of prophecy, his life seemed preordained to follow a dark path. However, his early experiences, marked by the loving nurture of his family and the rigorous intellectual environment of his education, suggested an alternative possibility. His formative years were a living argument against the inevitability of fate, embodying the belief that while the stars may predict a course, it is ultimately the individual's actions that determine the final destination. In this way, Ahimsaka's early life is a microcosm of the human condition itself, a constant negotiation between the forces of external predestination and the inner capacity to choose. The nurturing he received, coupled with the rigorous academic and moral training, provided him with a toolkit of virtues that, if maintained, could counterbalance even the darkest of prophecies. Yet, the seeds of doubt and envy planted by his early detractors hinted at the vulnerabilities inherent in even the most promising of lives. A foundation for transformation. Ultimately, the early life of Ahimsaka is not just a chronological account of his formative years, it is the foundation upon which his entire later journey is built. The lessons learned in the household of a devoted priest, the intellectual rigor of his schooling, and the complex interplay of admiration and envy among his peers collectively set the stage for the dramatic events that would follow. They provide a poignant reminder that the potential for both great virtue and profound error exists within every individual. In the case of Ahimsaka, this duality would eventually manifest in one of the most dramatic transformations in Buddhist literature, a journey from the depths of violence to the heights of spiritual awakening. In reflecting on Ahimsaka's early life, scholars and practitioners alike find a narrative that resonates with timeless truths about human potential. It is a story that challenges us to look beyond superficial labels and to recognize that the seeds of enlightenment can be sown even in the most troubled of beginnings. As we trace the contours of his youth, we see a delicate tapestry of promise, conflict, and the enduring struggle between destiny and free will, a struggle that continues to inspire deep reflection on the nature of human existence and the transformative power of compassion. The deception and fall into darkness. In the quiet corridors of ancient learning, where wisdom and virtue once reigned supreme, a sinister undercurrent began to take hold, a current born of envy, betrayal, and the corrosive power of deception. For Ahimsaka, the brilliant youth destined for greatness, the seeds of darkness were sown not by fate alone but by the bitter hearts of those who could not stand to see his light shine. The whispering shadows of envy. As Ahimsaka's talents grew, so too did the jealousy among his peers. In a community that prized intellectual brilliance and spiritual purity, his rapid ascent to mastery and the unwavering attention of Acharya Dasapamak ignited feelings of resentment. Those who once shared in the communal joy of learning began to view him not as a fellow seeker of truth but as an obstacle to their own ambitions. In hushed conversations and behind closed doors, these jealous students wove a tapestry of deceit, carefully crafting false narratives about Ahimsaka's character and intentions. The subtle whispers soon escalated into a full-blown campaign of slander. Rumors were spread that he harbored ambitions of usurping his teacher's position, that his insatiable quest for knowledge was a guise for a darker, more self-serving purpose. The once unblemished image of Ahimsaka was gradually tarnished by these insidious suggestions, and even the wise Acharya Dasapamak began to harbor doubts. In an environment where trust was paramount, the corrosive power of envy began to erode the bonds between mentor and pupil. The betrayal that shattered the innocence. In the delicate interplay of relationships within the scholarly circle, the betrayal of trust was the most devastating blow. Acharya Dasapamak, who had once recognized Ahimsaka as a promising beacon of potential, found his judgment clouded by the relentless tide of negative testimony. Influenced by the repeated insinuations and the persistent murmurs of discontent from his students, the revered teacher's faith in his protégé began to waver. It was during this tumultuous period that a moment of fateful cruelty was devised. In a bid to assert his authority and to cleanse the perceived stain on his teachings, Acharya Disapamukh imposed a harrowing challenge upon Ahimsaka. Under the guise of a sacred rite, a traditional commission that, in ancient times, might have symbolized the passage to higher spiritual power, he was commanded to collect 1,000 human fingers. This gruesome task was not only a test of loyalty but also a perverse distortion of spiritual discipline, intended to force Ahimsaka into proving his worth through an act that would forever mar his soul. Succumbing to the grim commission. For a young mind still grappling with the conflicting impulses of duty and morality, the command was a crushing blow. The notion of taking life, of desecrating the sanctity of human existence, was abhorrent to the teachings he had once held dear. Yet, the weight of his teacher's disapproval, compounded by the relentless pressure of a community steeped in jealousy and suspicion, left him with a single, torturous choice: to rebel against the expectations placed upon him or to comply with a task that would irrevocably alter the course of his life. The internal struggle that ensued was agonizing. Every beat of his heart echoed with the conflict between the innate goodness of his spirit and the dark pull of the commission. The voices of his ancestors, the echo of sacred chants he had learned in his childhood, and the comforting presence of a nurturing family were drowned out by the clamorous demands of a society determined to see him fall. In the shadow of betrayal, Ahimsaka found himself isolated, a once brilliant scholar now standing at the precipice of moral collapse. Relinquishing the vestiges of his former self, he ventured into the wilderness, where the task took on a grim reality. Each step into the forest represented a further descent into darkness. With every life taken in the fulfillment of the horrific command, the fabric of his once pure consciousness was torn further apart. The act of collecting human fingers was more than a ritual, it was a symbolic severance from his past, a deliberate, irrevocable break with the values and virtues that had defined him. In embracing this act, he became the living embodiment of the prophecy he had once been foretold to fulfill. The psychological abyss. The transformation from a promising youth to a notorious bandit did not occur in a single, cataclysmic moment. It was a gradual erosion of the self, where every act of violence further distanced him from his innate potential for goodness. The psychological impact was profound. Each life he ended, each fragment of a human hand he collected, served as a reminder of the betrayal, not only of those whose trust he had shattered but of his own inner moral compass. In the solitude of the forest, surrounded by the echoes of his past innocence, Ahimsaka's mind became a battleground for conflicting emotions. Remorse and guilt warred with a burgeoning sense of invincibility and the cold logic of survival. The darkness that enveloped him was not just external but deeply internal, a festering wound in his soul that threatened to consume all traces of the virtuous being he might have been. The cruelty of the task had stripped him of his identity, leaving behind only a hollow shell driven by a singular, destructive purpose. A cursed path forward. Thus, the deception and betrayal set in motion a chain of events that seemed inexorable. The act of collecting 1,000 human fingers became a perverse rite of passage, marking his transformation into Angulimāla, a name that would forever be synonymous with terror and bloodshed. It was a transformation catalyzed by forces beyond his control, forces that exploited his vulnerabilities and orchestrated his downfall. The once celebrated scholar, known for his bright mind and promising future, had been led astray by the poisonous influence of envy and deceit. Yet, even as Angulimāla embraced this dark destiny, there lingered a shadow of his former self, a flicker of the compassionate and inquisitive spirit that had once yearned for enlightenment. The deception that had pushed him into darkness was not absolute, it was a tragic misdirection, a distortion of what could have been a life of profound spiritual achievement. This lingering spark, however faint, would later play a pivotal role in his eventual redemption. The moral of the descent. The story of Ahimsaka's fall into darkness is not merely a chronicle of personal tragedy, it is a powerful allegory about the human condition. It speaks to the vulnerability of even the most promising individuals to external influences and the profound impact that betrayal and envy can have on one's moral compass. It serves as a stark reminder that the path to darkness is often paved with the small, insidious acts of deception and the erosion of trust. In the case of Ahimsaka, the convergence of external manipulation and internal conflict led to a profound loss, one that obscured the potential for goodness that lay within him. In reflecting upon this descent, we are compelled to consider the broader implications for our own lives. How often do we, too, allow the doubts and insecurities sown by others to undermine our true potential? How frequently does the fear of failure or the sting of betrayal drive us to make choices that lead us away from our highest selves? The tale of Angulimāla's deception and fall is a timeless cautionary narrative, urging us to remain vigilant in the face of negativity and to nurture the inner light that defines our true nature. Ultimately, while the deception and betrayal in Ahimsaka's story precipitated his transformation into a figure of terror, they also set the stage for a remarkable journey toward redemption. For within the depths of his darkness lay the seeds of a future transformation, a possibility for renewal that would only be realized when the light of compassion and wisdom finally pierced through the gloom. This duality, the coexistence of shadow and light, remains one of the most profound lessons of his life and an enduring beacon for all who seek to understand the complex interplay of destiny, free will, and the transformative power of the human spirit. Angulimāla, the terror of the land. In the wake of his dramatic transformation from the promising Ahimsaka to the dreaded Angulimāla, the man once marked by potential had now become a living embodiment of terror, a force that struck fear into the hearts of all who dwelled in the kingdom. His reputation, built on unspeakable acts and the gruesome collection of his victims' fingers, spread like wildfire, leaving behind a trail of bloodshed and despair. This section delves into the life of Angulimāla as the terror of the land, exploring how his actions disrupted the peace of communities, altered the course of local life, and served as a stark reminder of the depths to which a human soul can fall. A name that became synonymous with fear. The very mention of Angulimāla's name was enough to send shivers down the spines of villagers, traders, and even members of the royal court. Derived from the grisly habit of stringing together the fingers of his victims into a macabre garland, his name transformed from that of a once promising youth into a symbol of relentless brutality. The transformation was not merely physical, it was the corruption of the soul, a soul that had once been nurtured in a world of scholarly pursuit and spiritual discipline. Now, that soul was wholly dedicated to the annihilation of life, and every act of violence served as an affirmation of his terrifying new identity. The reign of unrelenting violence. Angulimāla's descent into violence was systematic and merciless. He emerged from the dense, foreboding forests of Kosala like a phantom, preying on unsuspecting travelers and caravans that dared to traverse the roads near his haunt. His approach was as unpredictable as it was brutal, striking swiftly and without remorse, leaving behind scenes that were almost impossible to comprehend. In the dead of night, under the cloak of darkness, he would ambush his victims with a ferocity that was both calculated and impulsive. The sounds of clashing weapons and the agonized cries of those caught in his path echoed through the valleys, etching a deep-seated terror in the collective memory of the land. The sheer scale of his atrocities was staggering. Villages that once thrived in the harmony of rural life were now gripped by fear, with families locking themselves indoors at dusk, and children being warned never to stray too far from home. Merchants altered their routes, and even the most common of trades became fraught with peril. The continuous onslaught of violence disrupted not only lives but also the local economy and the social fabric of the communities affected. Markets that once bustled with energy fell silent as fear of an encounter with Angulimāla spread among the people. The psychological impact on a community. Beyond the physical devastation he wrought, Angulimāla's terror had a profound psychological impact on the people. Communities that had long prided themselves on mutual support and resilience found themselves paralyzed by fear. The constant threat of sudden violence disrupted daily routines, sowing seeds of mistrust and anxiety among neighbors. Social gatherings were curtailed, and the vibrant cultural life that once characterized these villages was replaced by a pervasive sense of dread. Elders would recount with trembling voices the horrors they had witnessed, stories of brave souls ambushed and of families shattered by loss. These accounts, passed down from generation to generation, contributed to a collective mythos surrounding Angulimāla, a myth that grew more fearsome with each retelling. The terror was not confined to isolated incidents but permeated every aspect of daily existence. The memory of his ruthless acts served as a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the ever-present potential for darkness to engulf even the most peaceful society. The role of fate and choice in the rise of a monster. In analyzing the phenomenon of Angulimāla's reign of terror, one cannot ignore the interplay of destiny and choice. Born under a shadowed omen, Ahimsaka's initial promise was slowly subverted by the external influences of envy, betrayal, and the relentless pressures imposed by a jealous community. The cruel command to collect 1,000 fingers was not just a test of physical prowess or loyalty, it was a perverse ritual that severed him from his innate goodness. Each life taken, each finger added to his grotesque garland, was a step further away from the bright potential of his youth and a descent into a predetermined fate of violence. Yet, in the narrative of Angulimāla, there lies a paradox. His monstrous deeds were both a result of his personal choices and a manifestation of the external forces that had conspired against him. The story compels us to consider how easily one can be led astray when virtue is under assault from within and without. It also raises poignant questions about the nature of fate, whether the seeds of such terror were sown by cosmic design or if they blossomed solely from the neglect of the guiding principles that once promised redemption. A catalyst for change amidst chaos. Ironically, the terror inflicted by Angulimāla also set the stage for one of the most dramatic moments of transformation in Buddhist history. The extreme nature of his actions, combined with the palpable fear he induced, made him a subject of intense spiritual and ethical reflection for both lay people and religious leaders alike. His reputation as a ruthless killer eventually reached the ears of the Buddha, whose intervention would become a turning point not only in Angulimāla's life but also in the broader discourse on redemption and transformation. The terror that Angulimāla instilled in the land was a mirror reflecting the potential for both extreme evil and profound change. His acts of violence, while horrifying, underscored the importance of compassion and the urgent need for intervention by enlightened beings. The Buddha's subsequent encounter with Angulimāla, which eventually led to his renunciation of violence and adoption of the monastic life, served as a beacon of hope. It illustrated that even the deepest wounds inflicted by terror could be healed by the transformative power of wisdom and compassion. Legacy of fear and the long road to healing. For many years, the shadow of Angulimāla's reign continued to haunt the land long after his transformation. The scars he left, both physical and emotional, were slow to heal. The collective memory of his brutality influenced local customs, rituals, and even the spiritual practices of the communities affected. Special prayers and protective rites were developed, and his story was recounted as a cautionary tale about the perils of unbridled anger and the susceptibility of even the most virtuous souls to corruption. In many ways, Angulimāla's terror was a catalyst for a deeper societal awareness. It prompted communities to re-examine their values, their methods of conflict resolution, and their approaches to justice and forgiveness. His life became a profound lesson on the importance of vigilance against the seeds of envy and betrayal, and on the need to nurture the inner light that can counterbalance the forces of darkness. The legacy of Angulimala as the terror of the land is multifaceted. On one level, he is remembered as a brutal murderer whose actions left an indelible mark of fear across a vast region. On another, his story serves as a stark reminder of how external influences and internal conflicts can drive even the most promising individuals into the depths of despair and violence. His life invites us to reflect on the complex interplay between destiny and free will, and on the extraordinary potential for redemption that lies dormant even within those who have strayed far from the path of righteousness. As we consider the terrifying chapter of Angulimala's life, we are reminded that the human journey is one of constant struggle, between light and darkness, hope and despair, and redemption and ruin. His story challenges us to confront the realities of human frailty and the enduring possibility of transformation, urging us to remain ever vigilant in our own lives against the forces that might lead us astray. The Buddha's intervention. The turning point in Angulimala's turbulent existence came with a single, life-altering encounter, a moment that forever altered the course of his destiny. At a time when the path of bloodshed and cruelty seemed inexorable, the Buddha's compassionate intervention emerged as a beacon of hope and transformation. This section delves into that profound moment of encounter, exploring how the Buddha's serene presence and insightful words pierced through the veil of violence, inviting Angulimala to choose a new path. A serene presence in the midst of chaos. At the height of his reign of terror, Angulimala roamed the forests with an intensity that matched the darkness within him. His every step was marked by the weight of his grim deeds, a gruesome garland of human fingers that testified to a life consumed by violence. Yet, in a secluded forest clearing, far removed from the terror he had sown, fate orchestrated a meeting that would change everything. The Buddha, renowned for his unwavering calm and deep compassion, appeared not as an adversary but as a gentle guide. His approach was disarming in its simplicity. He walked along his path without haste, exuding an inner peace that starkly contrasted with the chaos of Angulimala's existence. In that quiet moment, the Buddha's very presence became an embodiment of all that is compassionate and wise, a living testament to the possibility of transformation even in the darkest of hearts. The pivotal words that changed a life. When Angulimala, driven by the relentless impulse to fulfill his dark destiny, confronted the Buddha, he expected resistance or confrontation. Instead, he was met with an invitation, a call to pause and reflect. The Buddha's response was both profound and unsettling in its simplicity. "I have already stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not yet stopped." These words carried an immense weight of meaning. In them, the Buddha was not merely referring to the cessation of physical violence, he was speaking to the inner turmoil that drove Angulimala's actions. With a calm yet unwavering tone, the Buddha highlighted the crucial difference between merely halting external actions and truly stopping the inner cycle of hatred and aggression. This subtle but powerful distinction was a direct challenge to Angulimala's self-perception, a call to look within and recognize that the power to change resided in him, not in the circumstances or the dark fate that had been prophesied. Breaking the cycle of violence with compassion. The Buddha's intervention was remarkable not for its dramatic gestures, but for its quiet efficacy. Without raising his voice or brandishing any weapon, the Buddha dismantled the barriers that had kept Angulimala ensnared in a cycle of violence. His compassionate approach did not condemn the past or shame the present, instead, it offered a pathway to redemption. In that critical moment, Angulimala experienced a profound internal shift. The relentless drive to collect more trophies of violence was interrupted by a dawning realization that his current path was unsustainable, a path that was alienating him from his own humanity. This intervention underscored one of the core teachings of Buddhism, that every individual, no matter how steeped in past misdeeds, harbors the potential for change and enlightenment. The Buddha's ability to see beyond Angulimāla's horrific actions to the latent goodness within him was a testament to his boundless compassion and spiritual insight. It was as if the Buddha had reached into the depths of Angulimāla's being and gently stirred the dormant seed of virtue, urging it to sprout amidst the ruins of a turbulent past. A mirror to the soul. The encounter served as a mirror reflecting back to Angulimāla not just his outward appearance as a murderer, but also the inner potential he had long neglected. The Buddha's serene countenance and gentle words offered a stark contrast to the turmoil that raged within him. For the first time in years, Angulimāla was compelled to confront the reality of his own existence, a reality that was not defined solely by the brutal acts he had committed, but also by the possibility of a life marked by peace and spiritual fulfillment. In the Buddha's presence, the harsh judgments of the world seemed to lose their power. The Buddha did not seek to erase the past, rather, he offered a way to transcend it. His invitation to stop was an urging to relinquish the compulsive cycle of violence, to let go of the anger and despair that had driven him for so long. It was a call to reclaim the self that had once been filled with promise, to rediscover the capacity for compassion and understanding that lay buried beneath layers of guilt and regret. The ripple effects of a single moment. The significance of the Buddha's intervention extended far beyond that single encounter. In the days that followed, the transformation in Angulimāla became a powerful symbol of the possibility of redemption. His journey from a life defined by terror to one of contemplation and spiritual seeking resonated deeply with those who had heard of his story. It served as a reminder that the path to enlightenment is open to all, regardless of the weight of past misdeeds. For practitioners and scholars of Buddhism, this episode remains a poignant illustration of the transformative power of nonviolence, mindfulness, and compassion. The Buddha's ability to reach out to a lost soul, to offer not judgment but a way forward, encapsulates the essence of his teachings. It is a reminder that the greatest act of power is often the power to forgive, both others and oneself, a power that can arrest even the most destructive of cycles and pave the way for renewal. The Buddha's intervention in the life of Angulimāla is more than a historical or legendary episode. It is an enduring lesson in the potential for change that exists within every individual. It teaches us that transformation does not require grand gestures or extraordinary circumstances, but often hinges on a single moment of insight, compassion, and the willingness to embrace a new way of being. As we reflect on this encounter, we are reminded of the profound truth that even in the darkest corners of human experience, the light of wisdom and love can guide us back to the path of peace and enlightenment. In embracing the Buddha's invitation to stop, Angulimāla not only altered his own fate but also left behind a legacy that continues to inspire countless seekers on the journey towards self-realization and spiritual freedom. The path to redemption. The path to redemption is a journey of profound transformation, one that requires a deep and unflinching confrontation with one's past, a steadfast commitment to change, and an embrace of compassion and wisdom as guiding principles. For Angulimāla, the once feared bandit, this journey was neither immediate nor effortless. It was a gradual, painstaking process of inner work that reshaped not only his actions but his very identity. Confronting the weight of a violent past. At the heart of Angulimāla's journey to redemption was the imperative to face the enormity of his past transgressions. The violent acts he had committed, each life taken, each finger collected, had left an indelible mark on his soul. For years, the memories of these deeds haunted him, manifesting as a persistent sense of guilt and a recognition of the irreversible damage he had wrought. This internal torment became a catalyst for change, prompting him to seek a path that would allow him to atone for his actions and reclaim a semblance of his lost humanity. In this phase of self-confrontation, Angulimāla was forced to reconcile the stark disparity between the promising young scholar he once was and the ruthless killer he had become. The confrontation was not merely a retrospective look at his misdeeds, it was an ongoing struggle to understand how he could transcend them. The internal dialogue was arduous and fraught with moments of despair, yet it also sowed the seeds of transformation by making him realize that redemption was possible, even for someone as deeply scarred as he. Embracing the monastic life, a new beginning. A turning point in his path to redemption was his decision to embrace the monastic life, a choice that marked a deliberate departure from his former existence. For Angulimāla, renouncing his violent past was not about forgetting what had occurred, but about forging a new identity rooted in mindfulness, discipline, and compassion. The monastic setting provided him with a sanctuary where rigorous spiritual practices, such as meditation, ethical living, and the study of the Dharma, became the pillars of his new life. In the quiet solitude of the monastery, Angulimāla found an environment that encouraged introspection and self-discipline. Daily meditation sessions offered him a way to quiet the turbulent echoes of his past, allowing him to cultivate inner peace and clarity. The practice of mindfulness enabled him to observe his thoughts and emotions without judgment, creating a space where the old patterns of anger and regret could be gradually transformed into wisdom and compassion. For instance, early in his monastic life, Angulimāla would often retreat into nature, seeking the calm of a secluded forest glade to meditate on the impermanent nature of suffering. In these moments of solitude, he began to perceive the interconnectedness of all beings, a realization that slowly undermined the isolation and hatred that had once defined him. This daily commitment to spiritual practice was not a cure-all but a steady, transformative process that allowed him to reshape his inner world gradually. Acts of compassion as reparation. Redemption for Angulimāla was also marked by his commitment to reparative actions. A deep understanding of the Buddhist principle of karma, that our actions have profound and far-reaching consequences, motivated him to engage in compassionate service as a form of atonement. He recognized that while he could never undo the harm he had caused, he could contribute positively to the lives of others to offset the weight of his past misdeeds. Angulimāla began by offering his assistance to those in need. Whether it was providing care for the sick, assisting with agricultural work in local villages, or simply offering a kind word to those suffering, every act of service was a step toward mending the broken fabric of trust that his previous life had torn apart. Over time, these acts of kindness helped to reshape his reputation among the people. The very communities that had once trembled at his approach gradually began to see in him the genuine transformation that the Buddha's teachings had inspired. One particularly moving example is the story of how Angulimāla devoted himself to the care of a small village where he had once committed heinous acts. Understanding the deep-seated fear and anger of the villagers, he worked tirelessly to earn their trust. His consistent, compassionate service, attending to the needs of the elderly, aiding in the reconstruction of damaged homes, and offering comfort in times of distress, slowly but surely began to heal the wounds of the past. Such acts of reparation underscored the possibility that even those who have strayed far from the path of righteousness can find a way back through sincere effort and unwavering compassion. The crucible of meditation and self-reflection. Central to Angulimāla's path to redemption was the rigorous practice of meditation, a discipline that allowed him to engage in profound self-reflection. In the silent recesses of his mind, he faced the full measure of his past actions, experiencing both the pain of regret and the spark of potential for renewal. Meditation provided a structured environment where he could observe the arising of negative emotions without being overwhelmed by them, gradually learning to transform these emotions into insights and compassion. Through sustained practice, Angulimāla began to see that his anger and fear were not inherent traits, but rather habits that could be unlearned. This realization was both liberating and humbling. By consistently returning to the meditative state, he nurtured a growing awareness of impermanence, a cornerstone of Buddhist philosophy. The more he meditated, the more he came to understand that clinging to the past only perpetuated suffering, while letting go allowed the possibility of true change. In time, meditation became the crucible in which the destructive forces of his former life were gradually purified. Every session brought him a step closer to inner clarity, helping him dismantle the mental barriers that had kept him trapped in a cycle of violence and despair. The transformation was not instantaneous, but it was steady, a testament to the transformative power of persistent, mindful practice. Overcoming social stigma and reclaiming humanity. Redemption, however, is not achieved in isolation. For Angulimāla, the path was also about overcoming the external stigma of his past. The community's memory of his former life as a ruthless killer cast a long shadow over his attempts at reform. Many people found it difficult to reconcile the figure of the repentant monk with the brutal bandit of legend. Yet, these external challenges became opportunities for Angulimāla to demonstrate the authenticity of his transformation. Each day, he faced hostility and suspicion, yet he chose to respond with unwavering compassion. Rather than reacting with bitterness or self-defense, he met the community's skepticism with gentle kindness. Over time, his consistent efforts, both in his personal practice and in his acts of service, began to erode the barriers of fear and resentment. The villagers slowly came to witness firsthand the depth of his transformation and the sincerity of his remorse. In doing so, Angulimāla not only reclaimed his own humanity but also paved the way for others to believe in the possibility of change. Integrating the teachings of the Buddha. Throughout this arduous journey, the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, served as the guiding light that directed every step of Angulimāla's path to redemption. The principles of non-attachment, compassion, and the inevitability of change were not abstract ideals but practical tools that he applied daily. The Buddha's words had once interrupted a cycle of violence, now they nurtured a cycle of healing and growth. Angulimāla immersed himself in the study of the Dharma, seeking to understand its profound insights on suffering and liberation. This intellectual and spiritual engagement provided him with a framework for interpreting his past actions and reorienting his future. The concept of karma, in particular, resonated deeply with him. By accepting that his past actions had consequences, he also embraced the responsibility to cultivate positive karma through every thoughtful, compassionate act he could perform. A lifelong journey of transformation. It is important to recognize that the path to redemption is not a destination reached by a single act, but rather a lifelong commitment to change. For Angulimāla, every day was an opportunity to rebuild his inner self and contribute positively to the world around him. His transformation was marked by continuous effort, a relentless pursuit of self-improvement, and a daily reaffirmation of his commitment to the Buddhist path. This journey was not without setbacks. Moments of doubt, the resurgence of old habits, and the ever-present weight of past actions often challenged his resolve. Yet, in each of these moments, the practice of mindfulness and the support of the monastic community provided him with the strength to persevere. His story became a living testament to the Buddhist belief that redemption is not about erasing one's history but about transforming it into a foundation for a more compassionate and enlightened future. A beacon of hope and renewal. Angulimāla's path to redemption is an enduring symbol of the transformative power of introspection, discipline, and unconditional compassion. It teaches us that even those who have strayed far from the path of righteousness can, through sincere effort and spiritual guidance, find a way back to their true nature. His journey is a powerful reminder that redemption is not a reversal of fate but a courageous embrace of change, a daily practice of rebuilding the self, one mindful act at a time. In embracing the monastic life, engaging in rigorous meditation, and committing to acts of compassionate service, Angulimāla forged a new identity that transcended the shadow of his past. His story continues to inspire countless individuals, offering hope that transformation is always possible, no matter how deep the scars of the past may run. The path to redemption, as exemplified by Angulimāla, invites each of us to believe in the possibility of renewal, to face our own inner demons with courage, and to walk steadfastly toward a future defined by peace, compassion, and enlightenment. Lessons from Angulimāla's story. The narrative of Angulimāla is not merely a recounting of one man's descent into darkness and subsequent redemption. It is a profound tapestry of lessons that resonate deeply with the core tenets of Buddhist philosophy and human experience. Through his dramatic journey from a notorious bandit to an enlightened disciple, Angulimāla's story imparts multiple layers of insight that continue to inspire and challenge those who reflect upon it. Here, we explore some of the most enduring lessons from his life, each offering guidance on the nature of transformation, the power of compassion, and the boundless capacity for change inherent in every individual. One of the most powerful messages of Angulimāla's story is that no one is beyond redemption. Despite his past filled with violence and cruelty, Angulimāla was able to transform his life through sincere introspection and the compassionate intervention of the Buddha. This transformation teaches us that every human being, no matter how deeply entrenched in negative behavior, harbors within the potential for change. The idea is not to erase the past, but to use it as a stepping stone toward a more enlightened future. His journey encourages us to believe in our ability to overcome even the darkest chapters of our lives by tapping into the latent goodness that lies within. Angulimāla's life vividly illustrates the complex interplay between karma, the accumulation of our actions, and free will, the capacity to choose a different path. While his early life was marred by negative influences and a prophecy that foreshadowed a grim destiny, it was ultimately his choices that defined his character. His initial descent into violence was fueled by external pressures and internal conflict, yet it was his decision to heed the Buddha's words and embrace a life of non-violence that redirected his fate. This lesson reminds us that while our past actions shape our present circumstances, our future is not fixed. By making mindful choices, we can transform our karma and set ourselves on a path toward liberation. At the heart of the Buddha's intervention in Angulimāla's life was a message of unconditional compassion. Instead of meeting Angulimāla with anger or retribution, the Buddha extended a hand of understanding and forgiveness, allowing him to see beyond his violent identity. This act of compassion was pivotal. It demonstrated that empathy has the power to heal even the most broken souls. The story encourages us to cultivate compassion in our interactions with others, reminding us that often, the most effective way to guide someone away from their destructive path is not through force or judgment, but through genuine care and understanding. Angulimāla's journey to redemption was not instantaneous. It was a gradual process that required persistent effort, deep self-reflection, and daily commitment to change. His path was marked by moments of doubt and the continual need to confront the weight of his past. This aspect of his story teaches us that redemption is not a one-time event but a lifelong process. It requires us to be patient with ourselves, to acknowledge our mistakes, and to continuously strive to act in ways that contribute positively to the world around us. In this light, every moment becomes an opportunity to rebuild and redefine who we are. A significant turning point in Angulimāla's transformation was his ability to turn inward through mindfulness and meditation. These practices allowed him to become aware of the destructive patterns that had governed his life, paving the way for profound inner change. The lesson here is clear: self-awareness is essential for personal growth. By regularly examining our thoughts, emotions, and actions, we can identify the habits that hinder our progress and work deliberately to transform them. The discipline of mindfulness not only fosters inner peace but also empowers us to respond to life's challenges with clarity and compassion. While Angulimāla's personal journey was deeply individual, his transformation also highlights the critical role that community support plays in the process of change. His acceptance into the monastic community provided him with a network of support, accountability, and guidance, elements that were indispensable in helping him overcome the stigma of his past and solidify his commitment to a new way of life. This lesson extends to all of us. Meaningful transformation is rarely achieved in isolation. Whether through family, friends, or spiritual communities, the support we receive from others can serve as a powerful catalyst for growth and healing. Forgiveness is another central theme that emerges from Angulimāla's story. His transformation was possible only when he was able to forgive himself for his past actions and when others, including those he had once harmed, began to see the sincerity of his repentance. Forgiveness, in this context, is not about condoning past misdeeds but about releasing the hold that guilt and resentment can have on our lives. It opens the door to healing, enabling us to move forward without being perpetually defined by our mistakes. This profound lesson encourages us to practice forgiveness as a means of liberating ourselves from the chains of the past and embracing a more compassionate future. The initial downfall of Ahimsaka, who later became Angulimāla, was precipitated by envy and deceit among his peers. Their manipulations not only distorted his self-perception but also set him on a course of violence and isolation. This aspect of his story serves as a cautionary tale about the destructive nature of envy and the importance of surrounding ourselves with honest, supportive relationships. It underscores the need to be mindful of how negative influences can derail even the most promising individuals and to strive for an environment where truth, integrity, and mutual support prevail. An essential lesson in the narrative is the imperative to take responsibility for one's actions. Angulimāla's journey illustrates that true transformation begins with an honest acknowledgement of the harm one has caused. Rather than deflecting blame or succumbing to despair, he faced his past head-on and committed himself to making amends. This act of accepting responsibility is not only a moral imperative but also a crucial step toward healing. It empowers us to learn from our mistakes and to take proactive steps to repair the damage, both within ourselves and in the lives of others. Finally, the story of Angulimāla reinforces the timeless relevance of the Buddha's teachings. In a world where the pressures of modern life can often lead to isolation, anger, and violence, the principles of mindfulness, non-attachment, and compassion offer a universal remedy. Angulimāla's transformation is a testament to the efficacy of these teachings. It is a reminder that the path to inner peace and enlightenment is available to all, regardless of the depths of past suffering. His story challenges us to revisit and apply these ancient principles in our daily lives, encouraging us to cultivate a spirit of understanding and empathy that transcends the barriers of our individual experiences. Conclusion: a multifaceted legacy of insight. The lessons drawn from Angulimāla's story are as multifaceted as they are profound. They speak to the complexity of human nature, the perennial struggle between light and darkness, and the transformative power of conscious choice. His life urges us to believe in the possibility of change, to nurture our inner capacity for compassion, and to commit ourselves to a lifelong journey of self-improvement and mindfulness. In reflecting on these lessons, we are reminded that the potential for both great error and magnificent transformation lies within each of us. The story of Angulimāla is not just a narrative of individual redemption but a universal call to awaken to our true nature, a nature defined by love, understanding, and the ever-present possibility of renewal. As we navigate the challenges of our own lives, may we carry these lessons with us, allowing them to guide our actions, shape our relationships, and inspire us to build a world where compassion and forgiveness are the guiding lights of our collective journey. Conclusion: the triumph of compassion. In the final analysis of Angulimāla's extraordinary journey, from the depths of unbridled violence to the serene heights of spiritual awakening, we are left with a resounding testament to the transformative power of compassion. This story, steeped in the rich tapestry of Buddhist teachings, not only chronicles the metamorphosis of a notorious figure but also serves as an eternal reminder that no soul is irrevocably lost. Compassion, as exemplified by the Buddha's gentle intervention and Angulimāla's subsequent quest for redemption, emerges as the supreme force capable of overcoming even the most entrenched darkness. The enduring power of empathy. At its core, the triumph of compassion is a celebration of empathy, an active force that reaches out to those who have fallen, offering not judgment but understanding. In the case of Angulimāla, the Buddha's compassionate approach was pivotal. Rather than reacting with anger or retribution, the Buddha saw through the layers of bloodshed and despair to the potential for goodness that lay hidden within. His simple yet profound message, "I have already stopped, Angulimāla. It is you who have not yet stopped," did not merely halt a cycle of violence, it opened the door to a possibility of transformation that transcended the apparent inevitability of fate. This moment teaches us that when we extend compassion, we do not merely alleviate the suffering of another, we also ignite within them the spark of self-reflection and the desire to change. Compassion is a catalyst for transformation. The narrative of Angulimāla is a vivid illustration that the journey to transformation is rooted not in the rejection of one's past but in the courageous acceptance of it. The man who once instilled terror in the hearts of many eventually found solace in the gentle, persistent embrace of compassion. This transformative power is not a passive state, it is an active, deliberate choice to confront the pain, to forgive, and to build anew. Angulimāla's arduous path to redemption was marked by the daily practice of meditation, self-inquiry, and acts of reparation that gradually mended the fractured remnants of his soul. In embracing these practices, he not only renounced his violent past but also redefined his identity, proving that compassion can act as a bridge between the darkest past and a luminous future. A universal message for every generation. The triumph of compassion in Angulimāla's story carries a message that is as timely today as it was in ancient Kosala. In every epoch, human societies are confronted with the specters of anger, hatred, and division. Yet, it is within our power to counter these forces by fostering an environment where compassion reigns supreme. The lessons drawn from this ancient narrative encourage us to look within, to cultivate empathy in our hearts, and to extend that empathy to others, regardless of their past. They remind us that while our actions may leave indelible marks on the world, our capacity for change and redemption remains limitless when we choose to act from a place of love rather than fear. Reclaiming the true essence of humanity. Through the lens of Angulimāla's life, we are urged to consider what it truly means to be human. Is our identity solely defined by the sum of our actions, or does it also encompass the innate potential for goodness that resides within us all? The transformation of Angulimāla suggests that every being, regardless of the depth of their transgressions, possesses a core that can be nurtured back to health through compassion and self-forgiveness. This insight challenges us to reframe our understanding of justice and retribution, not as mechanisms for punishing past errors but as opportunities for healing and renewal. In doing so, we embrace a more holistic view of humanity, one that acknowledges our shared vulnerabilities and the remarkable capacity for growth that lies at the heart of every soul. The ripple effect of compassionate action. One of the most profound outcomes of Angulimāla's redemption is the ripple effect that his transformation had on the broader community. His journey served as an inspiration, a living example that even those who have strayed far from the path of righteousness can, through sincere effort and guided introspection, emerge as beacons of hope. The change that began within him extended outward, influencing those around him and ultimately contributing to a collective shift in consciousness. communities that had once been gripped by fear gradually learned to embrace the possibility of change, recognizing that compassion, when practiced earnestly, has the power to heal societal wounds as well as individual ones. An invitation to embrace compassion in our own lives. The conclusion of Angulimāla's story is not a final destination but rather an open invitation to every one of us. It beckons us to reflect on our own lives and to ask, how can we embody the spirit of compassion in our daily interactions? How might we transform our personal challenges into opportunities for growth and understanding? In a world often divided by conflict and misunderstanding, the triumph of compassion stands as a powerful antidote, a reminder that love, empathy, and kindness are the forces most capable of uniting us. By choosing compassion, we not only honor the legacy of transformative figures like Angulimāla but also contribute to the creation of a more just, peaceful, and enlightened society. A lasting legacy of compassion and redemption. Ultimately, the triumph of compassion in Angulimāla's life is a legacy that transcends time. It is a story that affirms the resilience of the human spirit and the extraordinary potential for redemption that exists within every individual. This legacy teaches us that even the most grievous misdeeds can be transformed through the steady, patient work of self-improvement and the support of a compassionate community. It reminds us that the power to change our destiny lies not in the hands of fate but in our willingness to embrace the light of empathy and understanding. As we close this reflection on Angulimāla's journey, we are left with a profound and enduring truth. Compassion is not a mere sentiment but a transformative force that has the power to redeem, restore, and renew. It is through the courageous practice of compassion that we can confront our own shadows, mend the fractures within our communities, and ultimately, illuminate the path toward a future defined by peace, understanding, and boundless love. In celebrating the triumph of compassion, we are reminded that the journey of transformation is open to all, regardless of the darkness of one's past. With every act of kindness and every moment of genuine empathy, we contribute to a legacy of redemption that can uplift not only ourselves but the entire world. May this story inspire us to embrace compassion wholeheartedly, to nurture the light within, and to become active participants in the ongoing journey toward a more enlightened and compassionate existence.